Okay, 7th graders, obviously I'm not at school, but we're going to get started with our historical fiction novel, Riddle of Penncroft Farm. As we work through this novel, a couple of things we're going to focus on is, one, we're going to learn about the Revolutionary War through reading our novel and doing some additional research. We're going to explore characters throughout our novel and how they interact with each other. We're also going to explore and learn vocabulary, because there is some, Revolutionary War vocabulary, plus also this story takes place in Pennsylvania, and there's some vocabulary that's just related to Pennsylvania area. Other thing we're going to explore through this novel is what makes a historical fiction novel. Okay, so I'm going to start off reading a couple of the chapters to you, probably by next week or so. I won't be reading them to you, and you'll be doing more reading on your own, but I want you to get started. So, here we go. We're going to start on page 1, Riddle of Penncroft Farm. A shade in the window. Penncroft Farm isn't really haunted, is it? You told me there are no such thing as ghosts, I spluttered. Well, if it makes you feel any better, Lars, I swear that I never saw anything supernatural there, my mother replied. It was George who swore the place was loaded with ghosts. But then my brother always did love to tell tall tales. Mom was sitting in the front seat of our car, and I was stuck in the back as usual, so I couldn't see her face. But I could guess her expression from the sound of her voice. It had the sad tone she always used to talk about Uncle George. I wish you wouldn't mention ghosts, Sandra, Dad protested. Penncroft can be a very spooky spot when the wind moans through that old orchard at night. And you know, the house was built before the American Revolution. I'll bet a lot's happened there. I suppose George Washington slept there, I scoffed. No, I'm afraid not, honey, Mom said, much to Aunt Cass's eternal regret. Of course, he did spend a winter at Valley Forge, which is only a stone's throw away. I leaned forward eagerly. Valley Forge? Is that an amusement park like Valley Fair back home? Lars, don't tell me you've never heard of Valley Forge. Didn't you study the Revolutionary War in school? Mom exclaimed. Give me a break. We've been doing Minnesota history. You know, explorers like Zebulon Pike? Geez, I hope I don't have to learn a bunch of stuff about Pennsylvania. It's not fair having to learn 2 state histories just because I have to move. Dad humphed. You'll change your mind when we get into Philadelphia and see the Liberty Bell in Independence Hall. Too bad we don't have time today. Don't care if I ever see him, I muttered. He's still upset about moving, Eric, said Mom. Dad's voice deepened. I know it's tough, but he'll get over it once he makes some new friends and meets your Aunt Cass. Mom twisted around to look at me, although it was getting too dark to see much of anything. When George and I spent summers at Penncroft Farm, he used to play tricks on Aunt Cass. Cass called it bamboozling. That's one of her favorite words. It means fooling someone. What did she do to get back at him? I asked. Mom chuckled. Among other things, she apple-pied his bed. That's the old-fashioned name for short sheeting. Probably comes from folding the sheet in a triangle like a piece of pie. Like Peter used to do to me? I thought of how my older brother folded my sheets and tucked them tight so I couldn't get into bed. That reminded me that Peter got to stay in Minnesota because he was in college. I bet you were the best bamboozler, Sandra, Dad teased. Not me. I had better things to do. But, Lars, you bamboozled Aunt Cass thoroughly the last time we came, even though you were only 2. Whenever she'd go out to hang up the wash, you'd pull in all the latch strings and strand her outside. I did not. I don't even know what latch strings are. Dad explained that a latch string was a cord that could be pulled through a hole in a door to open it from the outside. Cass is crazy about kids who get into mischief, especially ones named George, like my brother, and you," Mom said. "Even though George is only your middle name, it still works like a charm on Aunt Cass. Guess it reminds her of our ancestor named George. Apparently, he was really something." "Anyway, Lars George Olafson, don't be surprised if Aunt Cass bamboozles you. She owes you a couple after that latch-string business," Dad warned. Trading practical jokes with an old lady didn't sound too exciting. I stared out the car window at the full moon lighting up the empty fields, and a wave of loneliness shivered through me. "Boy, you weren't kidding when you said this place was out in the country," I said. Dad replied, "Yeah, and it's easy to get lost out here. Instead of coming to nice square corners like in the Midwest, these little country roads snake all over the place, and they got screwy names like Seek No Further Pike." I perked up at the mention of pike. Catching walleye and northern pike was my specialty. So were puns. Seek No Further Pike? Is that what they called Zebulon when he retired from exploring? Or does it mean the fishing season's over? My double pun got double the usual groan from my parents. Seek No Further was the name of an apple grown around here a couple of centuries ago, Mom explained. And it's pike, as in turnpike, Lars. Seek No Further Pike is the road that goes past Penncroft Farm, Dad went on. It runs all the way to Valley Forge. By the way, Cass says there are bike paths and picnic places up there now. Seems ironic to go to Valley Forge for fun, though. I wonder if our ancestor George was there, Mom mused. "Oh, him again?" I muttered. I couldn't have cared less about some moldy old ancestor. The next subject, however, did grab my attention. I hunched forward to hear every word. "Did you call the school yet, Eric?" "Uh-huh. Lars is lucking out. There's a teacher's convention tomorrow, so he doesn't have to start until Friday." It didn't sound like lucking out to me. I counted on the weekend at least before plunging into a straight school. Besides, this weekend was Halloween. I hated to think about my friends back in Minneapolis trick-or-treating around our neighborhood without me. Actually, I quit wearing a costume years ago because I felt so dumb in one. But my friend Pat dressed up, and I'd go with him and wait on the sidewalk. Good old Patrick. He'd always share his halls with me. "Hey, wait a minute. Where will I go trick-or-treating on Halloween?" I asked. "It's this Saturday." "Sorry, honey. I guess you won't get to go this year. There aren't any neighbors close enough to walk to. At least at night," Mom said. "But don't worry. We'll have our own old-fashioned Halloween party." Great. I slouched back in the seat and closed my eyes. The sound of my parents' voices seemed to come from far away. "Have you had a chance to ask Aunt Cass about her will, Eric?" my mother asked anxiously. "Not really, honey. It's pretty awkward. Thought maybe it would be better if you asked her." "It makes me feel like such a vulture. But we do have to be practical. After all, Cass is 90 years old. Dad put the car into low gear for a hilly curve. "I can't believe she would urge us to pull up stakes and make Penncroft our home, unless she planned to let us stay after she's gone. Surely she's changed her will so we inherit the farm, Sandra. It's too bad you said you didn't want the place when she first asked you, after George died." "Yes, but back then we didn't think we'd ever move here. Then Cass wrote that she was leaving the farm to be used for a museum of the first American Civil War, whatever that means." "Well, she did say that the museum idea wasn't working out." "We'll have to ask her about her will sometime. Really, if she'd rather have Penncroft be a museum, that's fine too. I'll be happy wherever we live, Eric. But I would hate to uproot Lars again. Moving's been awfully hard on him. Still, I'm glad this Philadelphia job came along so you don't have to travel anymore." "Oh, look, there's a covered bridge," Mom said excitedly. Rattling through the old wooden structure roused me. I've never been in one of these before, I said. It's pretty neat. It is quaint, Mom said, but that's not the only quaint thing around. Wait until you see your bed. The one my brother used to sleep in at Penncroft. It has a canopy. A can-o-p? You mean this place doesn't have bathrooms? Mom shook her finger at me. You know very well what I mean, Lars. A canopy over the bed, not under it. It better not have ruffles, I protested. Oh, don't worry, she said. As canopies go, it's not a bit frilly. It was masculine enough for your ancestor George to sleep under. Besides, George himself is hanging in your room. So is his wife. Hanging? I stuttered. Every horror movie I'd ever seen replaying before my eyes. She's only teasing you, Lars, Dad said. It's a portrait of the old boy by Charles Willson Peale, who painted most of the Revolution big shots, like Washington and Franklin. Well, here we are. The headlights picked out a crooked wooden fence and a post with a sign in spiky old-fashioned letters. Penncroft Farm, I read out loud. Established 1760. Dad eased the car around the corner and started up the driveway. Don't even think skateboarding down this, Lars, he said. There's quite a drop-off at the other side of the pike. You'd break a leg if you went off it, and maybe your neck. It's too rutted for skateboarding anyway, Dad, I replied. Then as we jounced up the long, steep driveway, I stuck my head out the window to check out my new home. Even by moonlight, I could tell that it was different from any house I'd ever seen. It looked as if someone hadn't been able to decide what kind of house he wanted. So he hooked several kinds together. There were dark, bumpy stones on the middle part, but the left section was shingled like our old Minnesota house. The right was covered with white stuff. Mom said the pointy windows were called eyebrow windows. Okay, then. So which window belongs to the room where the ghost hangs out? I asked, only half in jest. Now that is something you're going to have to discover for yourself, she said, giving her version of a fiendish laugh. I winced. Oh, Mom, cut it out. You don't honestly think you scared me with that dumb story about ghosts. I didn't mean to scare you, honey. These ghosts are very friendly. Nothing to fret about at all, according to George. What an imagination that brother of mine had, and what a tease he was, she sighed. That's where your room is, Lars, Dad said. The far left window on the second floor, the one with the light on. I glanced up. Someone was silhouetted in the window of what was to be my room. Whoever it was slowly raised one hand. It reminded me of the picture sent on the Pioneer 10 space probe to greet the rest of the universe. Is that Aunt Cass waving us in? Is that Aunt Cass waving at us? I asked. I don't see her, Mom said. Where is she? There, in my room, I said impatiently. You must be seeing things, Lars, Dad responded. Cass hardly ever goes up there now. Stairs are getting to be too much for her. Maybe it's a window shade flapping in the breeze, Mom said. But can't you see? I looked up again, but the figure was gone. The headlights swooped past the front of an old barn as we pulled to a stop behind the house. As soon as I climbed out of the car, I started toward the back door. I wanted to know who'd been looking out that window. But before I'd taken more than a few steps, an eerie sound stopped me in my tracks. A spooky stream of notes, wheezing and piercing, was coming from the house. What's that? I said in a hoarse whisper. Without missing a beat, Mom answered matter-of-factly. Bach, staccato, and fugue in D minor, unless I miss my guess. Dad sang along. Da-da-la, dee-do-dee-do-dee-dee-dee. Remember, Lars, when you saw 20 Leagues Under the Sea? It's a pipe organ piece Captain Nemo played on board his submarine. Oh, yeah, I gulped. Captain Nemo on the Nautilus.